Hi, Wicked Witch of LA here, and thank you so much for joining me on today's video. So today is my first book review. Oh my gosh, I'm really excited for this. I haven't done a book review on here before, and I've been wanting to do a book review for a while. It's been a good minute. I literally since last year I've been wanting to do a book review, but we all know how inconsistent I am with videos. So I just thought, you know what, let me just sit down, do this book review. I'm really excited, especially because the first book that I chose is a relatively new book. It came out not that long ago, so I'm really excited to share my thoughts and opinions and let you know if this book is worth your money, because some books aren't. So, so the book that I'm going to be reviewing today is American Brujeria by J. Allen Cross. Now, like I said, this book is pretty new. It came out not that long ago. And I'm gonna start off just by kind of giving you an overall rating of what I think. I give this book an 8 out of 10. I think on my Instagram, I posted like a mini preview review. And originally, I had given it an 8.5 out of 10. But upon reading it like a third time, I've read this book like 3 times already. The third time reading it, I kind of brought it down to an 8. I'm not saying this book is bad in any way. It is a great book. If you are interested in learning about Brujeria, especially like American Brujeria, this is a great book to start with. I highly do recommend this book. But I give it an 8 out of 10, and I'll go into detail why I think so. So, American Brujeria is about Mexican-American folk magic, modern Mexican-American folk magic. Now, what that entails, and J. Allen Cross does a really great job of summing this all up, what it means to practice Mexican-American witchcraft. So it's essentially just witchcraft that is brought from Mexico, comes over to the US, and then over time it has changed a little bit, passed on to the generations. Now, when you first read this book, J. Allen Cross mentions, and I'm actually gonna just read out to you what he wrote. And it just says, this book is dedicated to anyone who has ever felt stuck in between. I think that's really nice that the author took the time to write that. Because a lot of Mexican Americans, especially if you're second, third, fourth generation, and you feel like maybe you're too Mexican to belong in America, but you're too American to belong in Mexico because maybe you don't speak Spanish or you don't look Mexican. A lot of times we feel liminal. A lot of times we feel like we're kind of stuck in this weird in-between space. We know we belong, but we don't. So the book is very welcoming. I think the author does a fantastic job of welcoming people. Now, I do want to say ahead of time, this book has mostly a Catholic overtone, and its view on Brujeria is based on the author's upbringing in Catholicism. So if you're someone who does not practice Catholicism, read this book anyway. If you're not comfortable with Catholicism, read this book anyway. Myself, personally, I am against a Catholic institution for personal reasons, and I still thought this book was great. So if that's something that bothers you, just set that aside and read the book with a fresh pair of eyes. Now, the book is made up of 9 chapters plus an introduction at the beginning. Now, each chapter covers different things. It covers La Virgen de Guadalupe. You have a chapter on Santa Muerte. You have a chapter on limpias and spells and all these great things that are very commonly seen in Brujeria, saints, spirits, and all these fantastic things. And I think the author does a really good job of organizing them. I think the order of the chapters is done really well. I'm really happy that this is being represented. Brujeria, Mexican folk magic, is not often seen or represented, especially in the online community. When I'm going through Instagram and I'm going through YouTube, I'm looking at videos and posts on witchcraft, half the time it's just, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's like, like neo-paganism, Wicca. I kind of tend to see the same thing over and over again. And it's really nice that I get to see Brujeria, magic from my country, being represented at a larger scale. So props to the author for making that happen. Now, I do have a couple things that I want to point out, that like the strong parts of the book and then parts of the book that I think are not so strong. So one of the strongest parts in this book, and forgive me if I'm like looking down a lot, because I'm trying to find my place, okay? So bear with. So there is an amazing, amazing section in the introduction that is, can non-Mexicans use this magic? That is the title of that section. I have received questions from people that are not Mexican asking if they can practice brujeria. This author, oh my God, sums it up so perfectly. Just absolutely fantastic wording. I mean, wow. I just want to give props to the author, to Jay, for just the way that they worded this, the way that they approach non-Hispanic people and how they can approach brujeria while still honoring, you know, my culture, my heritage. So really well written. I thought that was an absolutely fantastic point. And also the chapter on la Virgen de Guadalupe. Now, if you don't know who la Virgen is, la Virgen de Guadalupe is one of the biggest figures in religious figures in Mexico. Her history goes back into our indigenous roots and has over time transformed into probably the biggest Catholic figure that there is right now. La Virgen de Guadalupe is, yeah, very big, a very important part of our culture. And the chapter on La Virgen, history on point, the mentioning of our indigenous roots with them on point. So this author did their research. When you're reading this book, you can tell that they have done their research, especially on that chapter. Now, the author also does a really great job on adding things like tools that are commonly used and commonly seen in brujeria, different spells that are laid out, all the ingredients. One of the things that I really like about this book is how accessible the magic is within it. A lot of the things, like especially when it comes to the spells and rituals that this book has, you most likely already have in your home. And if you don't, you can probably get them all out of the dollar store. It is so accessible. It is so accessible. And just the fact that the author made this so accessible for us, but it's so powerful still, great. Absolutely fantastic. And just the overall tone of this book of just being faith-based, having faith in your prayers, having faith in your magic, that you really have to believe in this for it to happen. That point does come up here and there throughout the book. And I like that the author reminds you, the author reminds us, you need to believe in the work you're doing. You need to believe in the spirits. In the case of the book, you need to believe in God. And if you don't believe in God, that's fine. You can still read this book. But I love that the author includes that you have to have faith and you have to believe in the power of your magic. So props to the author. I really did enjoy that a lot. Now, some of the things in this book that I did not enjoy and I wish were different, I'm going to try to be nice about this. Let's see what we got here. So in the introduction of the book, there is a part where it tells the difference between Mexican-American witchcraft, so American brujeria, and traditional brujeria. The book mentions that traditional brujeria is more often used to cause harm and manipulation. And yes, you can do harm and manipulation with any witchcraft. Any magic can cause that. But when I read that, coming from someone who also practices brujeria, I just don't think that's true. This is my opinion only, but with the people and brujos that I have spoken to, that is just simply not true. That is not something that we most often do. Yeah, I don't want to get too deep into the detail, but I really wish maybe they would have worded that differently, or maybe just not included that at all. Maybe wording in a way that says, you know what, we do baneful magic, but we also have a lot of focus on healing and earth magic and magic that honors the earth. That is a very heavy thing in brujeria, traditional brujeria. Another thing that the author mentions twice in this book in the introduction is the term American brujeria. So one point in the introduction, he says, I came up with the term American brujeria. And then a little bit later on, it says, thus I coined the term American brujeria. And I don't know if I've heard this term before, American Brujeria. So I really wish that was maybe just not in the book at all, personally, because that's not the first time I've heard this book. It's the first time that the term American Brujeria is published like this. So I will give them credit for publishing that term, but I don't necessarily think that the author came up or invented this term, because I've heard this term on both sides of the border. Now, another section of the book that I felt a little fickle with was the chapter on Santa Muerte. Now, a lot of you that follow me on my Instagram, you know that I'm a devotee of La Santísima Muerte. So when I saw that there was a chapter on Santa Muerte, I got very excited, because I love seeing Santa Muerte get represented. I love hearing about her. I love learning about her, and I love seeing what other devotees think. Now, there are a couple things in the chapter about Santa Muerte that I don't agree with. I don't want to go too deep into detail, but I think personally that the chapter on Santa Muerte is not the strongest chapter in this book. Santa Muerte is a very mysterious figure, very complicated figure to deal with. And there are some good things in this chapter. There are some fantastic things in this chapter, like the author does question you whether or not you want to deal with something like Santa Muerte, because Santa Muerte is a very powerful, very intense, very intimidating being to work with, to build a relationship with. So I do like that the author questions you and makes you question yourself. Is this something you really want? Do you know what you're getting yourself into when you're dealing with death? With death itself. Santa Muerte is the personification of death. But there are a couple points in this chapter that are just not very strong, and in my eyes are completely false and misleading. There is a section in the chapter where it speaks about completing your promises to Santa Muerte, and if you don't, bad things will happen. There's a section where it says that, the author says they have known people who have lost homes, lost loved ones, and have committed suicide due to not fulfilling promises to Santa Muerte. I really wish the author would not have mentioned suicide in this, only because suicide is a very serious mental health issue. And even though Santa Muerte is death and suicide is death, I really wish they would have just either included something about mental health or just not included in any way at all, because it does make it seem like Santa Muerte can cause you to kill yourself. And I'm sorry, but that is not Santa Muerte. That is not Santa Muerte. The Santa Muerte I have known has been forgiving, has been loving, has been caring and understanding, that a lot of time we mess up. She is not strictly a vengeful being that is looking for a reason to punish us. And just the whole thing about the little snippet of like just throwing in suicide there at the end, I think was just wrong. I don't think that belongs in this book at all, especially in that chapter of Santa Muerte. The chapter on Santa Muerte, there are a couple points in there where it sounds like he's trying to make you afraid of Santa Muerte, which I respect that to an extent. Santa Muerte can be very scary, but it sounds like church fear. The kind of fear you hear in church where if you sin, you're going to go to hell. That's kind of what this sounds like, and I think that is not a healthy approach to working with someone like Santa Muerte or to deity work. So I really wish that was just completely either out or reworded completely differently. There's also a section where it says that in order to work with Santa Muerte, you need to embrace Catholicism. I am here to tell you that is not 100% true. Although Catholicism is a very important part of the Mexican culture and brujeria, it is by all means not necessary to be a Catholic. The author does mention in the beginning that you do not need to be Catholic or baptized Catholic, but then later on says you need to embrace Catholicism. It's a little contradictory, don't you think? So I really wish that contradiction didn't happen. Aside from that segment of La Santa Muerte chapter, afterwards you get into things like I mentioned earlier, like spells and different forms of cleansing, and a chapter on even your ancestors, which is absolutely fantastic. The chapter on ancestors was beautifully written. I absolutely loved it. And that is pretty much what you'll see throughout the book. Now, I do want to mention another point that I was not too happy with, and that was there's no bibliography in this. And it is, to me, a bibliography is extremely important when you are writing a book that teaches you something or gives you any form of history, any form of anything like that. It's teaching you, it's giving history, something. I think it's very important to have a bibliography at the end. I don't know if when the author was reading this book, They looked at other books for reference material to see what they had to say. If they did, I think they should have put a bibliography, because a lot of times when I read a book on witchcraft, I want to know what the author has also read, because none of us have it all in our head. None of us know it all or just came up in our head. You know, we've read material. Most authors have read other material. So I really wish the bibliography was there, because bibliographies do show credibility to the author. It shows, you know what, here are the references, and it gives us the opportunity to read those references as well. So I was a little disappointed, I'm not going to lie, that there was no bibliography, because again, it makes the book less credible. Now, does that mean that I think the information in here is bad or wrong? Not necessarily. I think you should read this book, but just that thing with the bibliography was no bueno. Now, aside from that, American Brujeria is a good book. Do I recommend this? Yes. The Wicked Witch of LA approves of this book. I really think you should go out and support the author. The author is very knowledgeable. The author knows what they're talking about, very much so. So if you're interested about learning about Brujeria and you want to learn American Brujeria, come on. Get this book, order it for yourself, support the author, order one for your friend. I mean, send me another copy. I don't mind having more than one. But that is pretty much it. I mean, final notes that I have on this book is that it's great for people that are liminal. It's great. This is a book that really welcomes the community. And I think this is a book that can really bring Mexican-American witches together. I think it can bring all the brujos, the brujas, and the brujexes together and really illuminate to the world of witchcraft, especially online, how powerful our craft is, how credible our craft is. So I'm really grateful that the author wrote this book. I'm very, very grateful for this book. All right, my witches, that is all the time I have today for this book review. Tell me what you think about the book review. This is my first book review, so if you feel like I should have done this shorter or longer or more in depth, let me know down below. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions as well. If you've read this book, go ahead and let me know down below what you thought about it. And if anybody wants to have a further discussion on this, let me know down below. I'm more than happy to discuss. Make sure to give the author, J. Allen Cross, a follow on Instagram as well. If you don't follow me on Instagram already, I don't know what you're doing. Go on my Instagram and hit me a follow. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, any questions, just let me know. Okay, sweeties? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video. As always, blessed be.